DESIblitz.com.
There is currently no cure for my condition. I've got neurofibromatosis, which caused my eye to be pushed out my skull.
What is NF1?
I've had 22 surgeries on my face.
I do look different. I was born different.
You've got to get on with it. You've got to be who you are. We're going to start the change one TikTok at a time, I guess. When I met my wife, her family did not want me to be with her. We got married regardless. I'm scared to start a family because I'm scared that they will end up looking like me. There's a 50% chance of my child inheriting my condition. Do we want to take that risk? Let someone go through that pain and that agony that I went through? The answer is no.
Amit, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to speak with you. I first kind of wanted to start off with your personal journey and your experiences. Could you just tell us what led you to be an advocate for the visually different community?
Yeah, so like I said, I was born with a condition called neurofibromatosis type 1. The condition is predominantly tumours that grow on nerves. It can grow anywhere in the body. About 1 in 3,000 people are affected by this condition. For me, it happened to affect my face, which was quite distinctive, quite visual, quite visible. So I've had many challenges in my life, right from childhood throughout to me getting a job, up until getting married. I've had various different challenges throughout my life, and I've wanted to make a change, make an impact, raise awareness, talk about my everyday challenges, my lived challenges, to help support, inspire people who have confidence issues, basically.
And growing up, how was it for you personally on a kind of mental and a physical level?
I think if we start from school, primary school was very difficult for me at many stages because actually I was just thinking about this today. Going into school the first day and having all those children stare at you or look at you, be scared of you. I have very sort of vague memories of people not wanting to sit next to me or be my friend, either because they were scared of me or because some of them thought, actually, if I'm going to be his friend, the cooler kids won't be my friend, so they decided they'd rather not be my friend.
How did you manage to kind of deal with that within yourself?
I think for a very long time that there wasn't a way. It was just very, very difficult and upsetting to be going to school. Obviously, at that age, you don't know what depression is, you don't know what anxiety is. But looking back now, I can say very much an anxious, depressed feeling for going into school because of that. How I dealt with it, I think, was by kind of trying to showcase my personality to people a lot more, like small things that I liked doing, I enjoyed. Like I like playing cricket, so I joined the cricket club at school. I started playing cricket, so people who played cricket and had that common interest suddenly saw another side of me. It wasn't just about the face. Amit actually plays cricket. Or I started talking to people about in like poetry. So like when we were learning about poems and stuff, I used to go and write different things, and people used to start getting connected with me via that. So I think the way I dealt with it is by letting my personality come out a bit more rather than just sitting there and feeling anxious and depressed.
Were there any comments that you can kind of recall on that that kind of hit home and you probably still remember?
Some of the comments that people used to say and laugh at was like blobby cheek, one-eyed wonder, because I used to have a big eyelid covering my real eye, so they're like, oh, here's the one-eyed freak. And because I couldn't see from the left face, I used to have people sitting next to me, especially when we got starting to get to year 4, year 5, when kids were a bit more notorious, putting their fingers up at me from the left-hand side because I couldn't see them. So suddenly the whole class would be laughing, and I wouldn't know why. And then I'd suddenly realise that there's this kid just making rude gestures from the left-hand side of my face.
Did those experiences get more difficult when you got older, or were it easier when you kind of went through secondary school or college?
I think it got more difficult as I grew older. Year 5, year 6. At year 6 was probably the tipping point for me, thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be in year 7 now. I'm going to go into a new environment. How am I going to deal with going to this new environment? How am I going to deal with all these people. There's only 30 people in my class now. In secondary school, there's going to be 30 people in each different class I have. It's going to be multiplied by 5 people, 5. How am I going to deal with that? I was petrified. I was scared. I didn't want to go into secondary school because I just didn't know if anybody would want to be my friend, if people would want to hang out with me. In fact, on the very first day when I went to secondary school, there were some kids from my primary school, and I thought I had some reassurance that I could go and sit with them, but they just went away from me and they went into their own thing because they didn't want to be representing me in a way, because they thought, oh, if we're representing him, then we might not look as cool and we might not make friends either. Oh my God. For those of you who saw my earlier post about going to a school today and talking to young children about looking visibly different, what an experience it has been. I'm so happy that I could help, support and inspire those young children by sharing my real life lived experience.
Kind of away from a school environment, was it the same in terms of around your community, your neighborhood, within your kind of, say, wider family or immediate family? What kind of difficulties or challenges did you face in that environment?
I think in my wider community, there was definitely a sense of resentment. They were like, there was a lot of blame on my parents. Like, my parents must have sinned in their life to give birth to a child like this. And testament to my father, I mean, the strength I have and the confidence I have of sitting here today, talk about this and raise awareness about the visibly different community comes from him. He never actually even made me realize that I've got a visible condition. The way he dealt with me was like just as if he would treat any of his other children. And I think that instilled in me the normality. It normalized things that society and school didn't allow me to do sometimes.
And kind of what are some of the biggest challenges? You've touched on it there, but in terms of people with facial differences in their daily lives that people wouldn't normally recognize, what kind of difficulties or challenges would?
I think it's the fear of being accepted. Whenever you're going into a new environment, for me, whenever I'm going into a new environment, I'm scared. How will people perceive me? When we used to have guests coming to the house, and when I knew they had young children with them, I would hide. I'd be scared to come down and see that family, because I know that child is gonna react either in fear or out of curiosity to just stare and point and make a comment. And I think that's the difficulty a lot of people with visible conditions have. They fear going into new environments, and they have that sort of lack of confidence because of that.
And in your kind of personal opinion, what kind of misconceptions or stereotypes do people with facial or visual differences face?
I think it's a lot to do with what we can and can't do. People assume that we have learning difficulties. People assume that we're not able to do a certain task. So sometimes out of pity or out of, making a perception that we can't do something, they'll try and come and help us. And we're like, well, we don't really, we're independent people. We don't need that help. We can get on with our life in our own way. I think that's a common misconception.
And we did touch on this earlier, kind of off camera, and that there was a big importance for you on acceptance and self-acceptance. And would that be the driving factor for those who are suffering from, visual differences or any type of difference? Is it about acceptance?
Absolutely. The moment you can start accepting yourself is the time when others will accept you. If you can't learn to accept who you are. I mean, I looked in the mirror many a times and asked myself, why me? But at the same time, I can remember there were many times when I was growing up, I said, well, I can't change the way I look. What I can change is my mindset. I can change my outlook about how I deal with people. So when I go out to an event or when I meet new people, I will talk to them about my personality. I'll talk to them about the fact that I like cricket, or, about the fact that I, like listening to good music, or I like buying expensive, hi-fis because I like sound. And suddenly when I'm doing that, they see me as that person associated with good quality sound, somebody who likes cricket, somebody who likes going out and about, somebody who likes buying good blazers. So it's that kind of thing. You need to accept who you are. Find things about yourself, about your personality that you can express. And I call it let your personality shine.
Now, the kind of, I guess, the turning point for you was your first TikTok video. And I just want to kind of know more about what inspired that. What was the moment where you said, you know what, I'm actually just going to post this online because I want to?
I've always wanted to make a positive change. And a lot of the times when I was going to networking events, people were asking me about... So I used to go to networking events for work, and people would start talking to me about my confidence. People would start thinking that I'm actually here to represent a charity or something. They wouldn't actually ask me about my actual day job. So it got me thinking that a lot of people are taking inspiration from my attitude. And I went to one particular one where somebody came and said to me, I think you would blow TikTok up. You know, you should make some TikTok videos about confidence tips. And I didn't really give it much thought. I never thought I'd make a TikTok video, but one day I was walking down the road and I realized that people do stare, and people are looking when you enter, like they just look from the corner of their eye and then they look away. And then I thought, I've got to do something about this. I've got to spread a message that it's not okay to stare. It's okay to be curious and things like that, but you can't just stare. And I made a video and I just posted it, and within 24 hours, it reached over like 50,000 people. You know, my followers went up, and I thought, this is great. Let's do more of this because people are, you know, receiving this and welcoming this in a good way. I used to be so jealous of people's faces growing up, looking at people's perfect faces, wondering why I have such an imperfect face. I used to cry in my room, feeling upset, depressed, that I didn't look right, only to grow up and realize that there is no right. People will always talk, people will always comment, people will always judge, regardless of how you look. So my advice to anyone who feels insecure is be yourself, be who you are, enjoy your own company and smile, because regardless of the way you look, people will always have a comment to make. Be your own judge and be proud of who you are.
I think obviously that's one of the biggest challenges that people with visual differences face is staring or judgment. And I think that happens maybe quite a lot within the Asian community because there's a certain stigma or taboo attached to different people. And for you in that community that we kind of touched on earlier, what kind of things would you feel from them? You know, was it judgment? As you said, there was kind of blame on your parents, but could we kind of touch on more a bit?
Yeah, so the judgment was a lot when I was younger. But as I grew up, the finger started pointing at me. I remember there was one incident before I got married when I was at a wedding and I was standing near the bar somewhere, and there's a group of aunties saying, you know, it was one of my mates' weddings, so they were saying, oh, you know, his mate's got married. You know, which father or mother would give their daughter away to him? And in the same wedding, someone had a conversation with me about arranged marriages and saying, oh, you know, it'd be nice if we could find you someone from back home, get you married. But think of it this way, you know, put yourself in the father's shoes. Would you want to marry someone who looks like, and this person was talking to me like one-on-one, and I was thinking, how are you having this conversation with me? You know, they're like, you've got a great personality, Amit, but we just feel that if it wasn't for your condition, then you might have found somebody, you know, nice. And
has that changed to this day, or is it still that kind of judgment and that kind of oversight?
One of the negatives of my TikTok and the negative comments I'm getting now is everyone saying my wife married me for the passport, and it is horrible. It is absolutely horrible. You know, the first time my wife read that comment, she broke down in tears. You know, to touch on a little bit about her, when we first started talking and video calling, I'd only show her half of my face on the video calls, and the moment I knew she's the right person is the day she said to me, look, you keep showing me half of your face. I haven't said anything for the last few days, but if I get married to you, I'm not going to marry half of your face. I'm going to marry all of you. So quit hiding your face and let me just see the whole face. And that's the day I knew that she means something to me. Her family were dead against this. Her family weren't saying, oh, go to, you know, you're going to get a better life. You're going to get a British passport, all this. Her family said, we do not categorically want you to marry this man. How are we going to show our face to the community? In fact, if you do get married to this man, we're not going to do a big grand wedding. You can come here, you can go to a temple, and you guys can get married. I mean, her mum didn't even come to the wedding.
And how did that make you feel?
Really upset, really upset. I mean, the whole thing leading up to our wedding was really traumatizing for me, because I knew I'm getting all this rejection because of the way I look. You know, I had to prove that, you know, this condition isn't going to affect my life expectancy. I had to go to my doctors and get a letter to say, actually, this. Even my doctor was furious. He was like, well, you know, why are they asking for this? They wanted to know that, does this condition have an effect on my life expectancy? You know, what will happen to my kids? You know, and this is like personal conversations that me and my wife need to be having, not before my wedding with her whole extended family. So it was really difficult, really difficult.
And in terms of your wife's position, having to kind of hear that from her own family, but then being in love with you, I'm guessing obviously that was a very difficult time for her as well.
Absolutely. There were many times before the wedding that she broke down in tears. She called it off with me and said, look, you know, I can't do this anymore. My family are too sort of against this. I can't do this. She was torn between two. She was like, does she listen to her family or does she listen to me? And she said to me after the wedding, one of the biggest reasons she didn't want to reject me after all of this was she thought it would break me. She goes, it must have taken me a lot to build my confidence and trust in someone, to say, actually, someone looks beyond my face. And for her to then say no to me, she felt like it would have broken me, and it would have made me feel like she's only said no to me because of how I look as well. And that would have broken her. And she would have only done that because her family were forcing her into it.
And do you get any kind of, obviously you said you get comments about, you know, your wife's only married you for this reason. And do those comments still carry on to this day as well? Or do they get worse or?
They do carry on. I mean, a lot of people that came to my wedding probably came to see me and see, you know, the fact that I've got married. A lot of them were happy that I'm married. A lot of them were joyous that I'm married. But a lot of those people, same people, never actually thought I would get married. A lot of people in my family never thought I'd get married. And I've had this conversation with my family members. A lot of them who worried that maybe someone would marry me to take advantage of me. A lot of people said, actually, you're just going to get rejected and it's going to break your heart. So let's not even go there. So they wouldn't even try and say, actually, let's encourage you to get married. Let's encourage you to go and find somebody.
And has that been, that kind of whole experience and that whole moment, has that been one of the driving factors in terms of the actual work and advocacy that you do now?
Absolutely, especially for our community, especially for the Asian community. I think it's so important for them to understand that people with visible differences also have a personality, also have things to offer. You know, I've got a good job, I've got a nice family, I've got a loving wife now. You know, I'm getting on with life. I'm doing everything a normal person is doing. But we're all different in our own way. And if we were all the same, the world would be a boring place.
Have you been part of any kind of projects that are driving kind of this empowering movement to raise awareness?
Yeah, so there are a couple of organisations out there who are working on this agenda to normalise and remove the stigma of visible differences. One of them is Face Equality International, who do great work internationally to normalise this. They want to get more media representation for people with visible differences. I think the media plays a huge role in setting people back. You know, I think I touched on this off camera with you about every time you see a character on TV with a scar or a visible difference or a disfigurement, they're portrayed as the negative person. They're portrayed either the villain or someone bad. And that has a negative impact on the society of how they perceive us. So that needs to also change. And that's something I want to do as part of my movement as well.
are there any kind of success stories that you've come across where you've impacted a person or multiple people, not just in the UK but across the world?
Yeah, so when I started TikTok and I posted my first video, my wife asked me, what do you want to achieve from this? Where do you see this going? And I was like, if I can impact one person's life positively, and if one person come and say to me, thanks, I think that will mean a lot to me if I can just change that one person. And about 2 weeks into me posting my videos, somebody sent me a message on TikTok. They sent me a DM and they said, Amit, just watched your videos. You're really inspirational, really motivating. Thank you. And she said, the problem I have is I've got my tumors. She's got the same condition as me, NF1. She's got, I've got the tumors on my hand and on my sort of thighs, and I can never wear short sleeves. And whenever I go on holiday, I can never really go swimming, and it really upsets me. And I said, well, why can't you? She goes, well, if I'm going to wear short sleeves, if I'm going to wear a bikini to go swimming, people are going to look, people are going to judge, and my friends are going to judge me. And I said, do you really want those friends? Let's be real. If someone's going to judge you for a few tumors that you have on your hand, or a few tumors that you've got on your legs, and it's stopping you from going out swimming and enjoying yourself, do you really want those friends? And she said, oh, thank you very much for that advice. It really helped. And I thought not much of it after that. 2 weeks after, she sent me a message again saying she's put on her Facebook and her social media that she's got these tumors. She's got an F1. She took pictures of her arm and stuff. And it turns out that her supervisor also has the same condition. Because she put this post on, her supervisor said, actually, I've got the same condition. And now she feels so empowered, so happy, so confident. And I asked her, how do you feel? And she's like, I feel, the word she was epic. She goes, I feel epic. And a week after, she posted a picture of her in a bikini on holiday. And it made me so proud to see that picture. And I put in a comment saying, I'm so proud of you. Well done. Keep doing what you're doing.
In terms of obviously having that kind of impact across the world in terms of your social media and your TikTok, when you've gone to different places, kind of the main one being India, within your life, how was the reaction there? Was it?
Oh my God, India was completely different game altogether. I remember on my wedding day, so we got married in a temple because her parents didn't want the wedding at home, and we were in this temple, and it's like a conveyor belt. So you're standing in a queue to get married. You sit down, and the priest is there, and they do everything. And literally, there were people around waiting for other weddings. They were in my face. They were standing right in front of me with their phones, taking pictures of my face. And literally, the place got crowded threefold than it usually was, because people were phoning each other saying, oh, look, there's a man here who looks really funny. And they were saying that, I could hear them saying that. There's a man here that looks really funny. He's getting married. Can you believe it? And I've just remembered one more incident, which I want to touch on, which was a really, really upsetting incident for me in India. So during the time I was getting my wife's passport done, we had to get a lot of verifications done. So we had to go to the police station a lot. So I went to the police station and went to the reception with all the documents. And one of the documents was missing, and it was a female receptionist that was sitting there. She made no eye contact with me. She just handed me some paper and said, this isn't right, go and fix it. And I was like, well, how do I fix it? What do I do? She didn't give me any advice. Thankfully, there was somebody around who was quite helpful and said, look, there's a photocopy shop across the road. Go there, photocopy these documents and just sign them. So that's fine. I went there. I came back, and when I came back to the desk, she got up and said, oh my God, I'm feeling ill. I'm feeling really sick. I'm going to move. And she moved away, and another person came and sat down and finished the verification process. And as we were walking off, my wife goes to me, do you know what happened? And I go, what happened? She goes, after you left, she asked me who you were. So I said, oh, that's my husband. And she goes, you married that. Like, literally, not even him, or you married that. I mean, how could you? My whole body's feeling funny. That's what she said to my wife. And that's the kind of comments you get when you're in India. You get it here as well, but it just amplifies when you're in India. People are just staring at your face like they've seen a ghost.
Mm-hmm. But why do you think that is within the Asian community? Whether it's in India, the Asian community in the UK, or if it's in different countries, Pakistan, Bangladesh, wherever. Why do you think there is such a judgment placed on people who are different?
I think there's this idea of perfection. that everyone has. My son's going to be a doctor, my son's going to be an engineer, my son's going to be an accountant, my daughter's going to be the most perfect person, and we're going to find her the most perfect husband. That idea of perfection is what drives it, and anything outside of that normal perfection is deemed to be unwanted, untouchable. I've been called untouchable as well in India. People wouldn't come near me. They're like, oh, he's untouchable.
And how do you think things can change surrounding that?
Education. We've got to stand up and start talking. We've got to do what I'm doing right now. There's got to be more media representation. There's got to be more sort of understanding from people that actually these people have feelings too. These people have personalities. You know, this person goes and watches cricket at the stadium and cheers his team. He lives a normal life. He's got a day job. You know, he brings bread and butter to the table for the family. You know, we do what everyone else is doing. It's just that we look different, but we're all different. When you find your why, everything falls into place. You need to live life with a purpose. I found my why. I want to help, support and inspire people live a more confident life. I want to share with you how to be confident. I want to share with you the secrets. Well, they're not secrets, but things I've done in my life to become more confident. You too can be confident. You too can be who you want to be. You too can live a life of purpose. You just have to find your why.
Have you seen any improvement in terms of in real life, or whether it's on social media, in terms of people coming to you saying, oh, thank you for shedding a light on this, or thank you, I didn't know this?
Absolutely. To touch on TikTok and the social media stuff, a lot of people have messaged me saying, oh, right, okay, I didn't know that. That, you know, that asking questions are okay. And they're like, oh, so how do I deal with it when my son is pointing at somebody? Or so there's a lot of engagement, and people are learning, and people are changing, and people are becoming more accepting.
And can you kind of, if someone was to come to you and say, I've got a visual difference, or someone I know is struggling from it, what pieces of advice would you give to them?
If someone says to me they've got a visible difference and they're struggling, the first thing I'm going to say is, have you accepted your difference yourself first? Have you looked in the mirror and said to yourself, this is who I am, this is how I am, and this is who I am? Have you done that yet? If you haven't, try and do that first. It's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight for me. There are many days now where suddenly I ask myself, oh, why me? Or I feel sad, or I feel neglected because of the way I look. But it starts with acceptance. It starts with saying, yes, I am who I am, how I am, and I celebrate that.
And there has to be a lot of mental strength that comes with this. It's not just a physical or a visual thing. How do you maintain that kind of mental toughness?
I think it's the people around you as well that make a difference. It's not just me. Like I touched on my father at the start of the interview, how I said he's been an amazing sort of rock to me because of the way he dealt with me. You know, my friends as well, they treated me just like they treated all the other friends. I didn't get that special treatment, because if I got that, then I would have felt, oh, I'm special, I need help, I need people to rely on, I'm not independent. But because they dealt with me the way everyone else dealt with me, I had that feeling of independence, of I am who I am.
And what are some of the kind of key resources or support networks that you've come across that you can kind of share with other people?
So Changing Faces is a charity organisation that's got a lot of help. They've got a lot of coaching that they do one-to-one with people. I've used Changing Faces myself. My story is shared on there. So they're an amazing resource that people can go to, especially with people who've got neurofibromatosis, especially people who've got visible differences.
And for you now, what are your goals? What are you working towards?
My goal is to go out and talk more publicly about the challenges of living with visible differences, with the aim to help, support and inspire people, give people more confidence, not just people with visible differences, but people who have confidence issues, to sort of let them empower themselves, accept themselves, celebrate being human.
Amit, thank you so much
Thank
for
you very
talking to
much.
us. Cheers.
Hi guys, my name's Amit Ghose and you're watching me on DESIblitz.com.